Welcome to Spoonful of Strength, a podcast for people with chronic illness and the ones who love them, where we talk all things chronic. Here's your host, Rachel and Tina. Welcome to Spoonful of Strength. How are you doing today, Tina?
I am doing great. How are you, Rachel?
Not bad at all. So, welcome to Spoonful of Strength, where this week we have a special week because we've got 2 episodes. Today we are going to actually learn a little bit more about Tina and her journey. And Thursday, Tina will be turning the tables on me, and I'll let you know a little bit more about me and my story. And our hopes are that you can get to know us a little bit better, and hopefully in the weeks and months to come that we can get to know you a little bit better as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Tina, who's going to discuss her health journey from when she was younger all the way up to present. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Tina.
Thank you, Rachel. It's a pleasure to be here to share my story with everyone in the hopes that it may give you some encouragement, not feel quite so alone. Many of us struggle with chronic illness and health issues, and it can sometimes be overwhelming. So I started, my first initial chronic illness diagnosis was fibromyalgia. And that was in the mid 90s. I remember struggling a lot with, I had chronic migraines as well. Just feeling run down, tired, a lot of joint pain, just overall not feeling well. I always describe my flare-ups as almost like you're coming down with the flu. And oftentimes I'll joke and go, well, is it a flu or is it a flare-up? I guess I'll find out in another day or two while I'm waiting to see if I start running a fever and the typical flu symptoms versus just the general aches and pains, which tend to be the fibromyalgia. I do remember going through various testing. There's no blood test for fibromyalgia. It's more of a checking off the things that it's not, like the Epstein-Barr virus and other illnesses that it could possibly be. So it was more of a nope, it's not that. No, it's not that. No, it's not that. With fibromyalgia, there are, I believe it's 21 specific points, pressure points that can be tender within your body. And it's usually right along those joints where you have that insertion into the muscle and into your muscle into your joints and those connections, those connected spots. I remember when they were testing me for that, they stopped at 17. Like every single spot they touched was tender to the touch. At the time, I was mostly taking just over-the-counter medication. They did put me on muscle relaxers to try to help me with my headaches, which didn't really help a whole lot. I've tried I believe it was Lyrica at the time for the aches and pains, but that ended up not really helping the symptoms so much, but the side effects were a little more than what I wanted to continue. Like they encouraged me to try to continue staying on it longer term to give it time to start working in my body. But I started having issues with restless leg and insomnia from that. And even to this day, I still struggle with insomnia. I've never really gotten my sleep schedule back on track unless I take something to help me sleep. So over the years, I did find that one of the biggest factors for me as far as keeping the pain at bay is my vitamin D levels. Most of us in general, most of us run with low vitamin D levels. We don't get out in the sun as often as we should, which is the biggest way to keep those levels up. And we all tend to run with lower vitamin D levels than what we should be at. When mine dip down too low, that's when I'll start noticing the joint pain, the muscle aches, those type of things. So that's usually one of the first things I'll ask my doctor when doing blood work to check if I start feeling those aches and pains. Heat helped me a lot. Trigger point therapy actually helped me a ton with the migraines that I would deal with. And trigger points are basically these, so our muscles contract and expand as we use them. And throughout the use, we produce lactic acid. And from time to time, you'll get a lactic acid buildup where it's just a teeny tiny little, almost like a pea-sized knot in that muscle. It's keeping it in a constant state of semi-contraction. So that's also where you could start having pain, and a lot of times it's referral pain patterns, like a trigger point in your shoulder can be causing you, in your right shoulder could be causing you pain in your left leg. It was when I first started learning about trigger point therapy, I had a hard time believing the referral pain patterns until I started seeing a trigger point therapist. So going through the trigger point therapy, releasing all of those trigger points helped also tremendously. So in general, as far as fibromyalgia, I know it has changed throughout the years as far as medications and things, but for me, my biggest factor is just self-care, heat, saunas, infrared saunas, trigger points, massage, keeping those vitamin D levels up. And so in general, I haven't really had the flare-ups like I used to deal with in the 90s anymore. If I start feeling like it's flaring up, I'll kind of up my vitamin D intake to try to bring it back up, and that tends to help me significantly with keeping that under control.
A couple years ago, my husband wanted to give me an MS t-shirt for my birthday. All he could find, though, were brightly colored t-shirts with big graphics, like a smiley face given 2 middle fingers, and words like F U MS. Isn't there an option for a simple, stylish t-shirt that spreads awareness with kindness? That's when I created SpoonFull of Strength, shirts that are inspirational, motivational, and stylish. You can find us on Etsy, Instagram, and Facebook at SpoonFull of Strength. That's SpoonFull with 2 L's. Enter code PODCAST for 20% off anything in the shop. So Tina, you mentioned in our introductory episode about your cancer diagnosis. Can you tell us a little bit about how you found the cancer and how that all came about?
I was relatively healthy through up until 2018. I had come down with what I thought was a stomach bug at the time, which actually I still think it was just a stomach bug. But every time I would eat, I would have stomach pain, sharp pain in my stomach. So after a couple of days of that, my fiance encouraged me to go to a walk-in clinic to find out what's going on, just to confirm that it's just a stomach bug. It'll pass. And the day that I went, I was actually starting to feel a little bit better, but I had promised him I would go, so I still went ahead and went. And because of the pain that I was having, the sharp pains, they wanted to rule out that there was nothing going on with my gallbladder or my gallbladder, pancreas, or appendix is what they were looking at. So they scheduled an ultrasound for the next day, and they also scheduled blood work. So the day that I left the clinic, I went and had that blood work done, and then the next morning I went and had the ultrasound done, and everything that they initially were looking at was fine. There was nothing wrong with I didn't have appendicitis. I wasn't having a gallbladder attack from what they could tell. So everything in that regard was fine. But she said she had noticed that my left kidney had hydrophonesis, which was fluid buildup. It was not draining. Something was blocking that left kidney. And at the time she told me, it may just be a kidney stone. I can't tell from the ultrasound, so we need you to come back for a CT scan. And they scheduled a CT scan that afternoon for me to figure out what it was. So I left. I was a little concerned maybe at the time, but just figuring, oh, well, she said that it could be a kidney stone. So that's what I was hoping, that that's all it was. At that point, honestly, cancer never even crossed my mind. So while I was waiting, I had a few hours in between the time I had the ultrasound to the time I could go in for the CT scan. And during that time, the physician assistant that I had seen the day before had called me. He had gotten my blood results back and told me that I was very severely anemic, and I needed to go straight to the emergency room so that I could have a blood transfusion. And told me, don't, you're so severely anemic, you need somebody else to drive you. You shouldn't be driving. And then while you're there, they can do the CT scan. But the time I actually had gone into work to kill a couple hours waiting for the time for the CT scan initially. So of course I called Dave at work, told him what was going on, and of course hopped in my car and drove home despite being told not to drive. Packed a bag because I didn't know how long I was going to be there, grabbed my Kindle, the typical things of I'm going to the emergency room, I'll be there for probably a number of hours, and I need my Kindle and things to keep me occupied, phone chargers, that type of thing. I get to the emergency room, and while they were waiting to arrange the blood transfusion, they went ahead and took me in for my CT scan. And that came back. That was when the emergency room doctor came up and was like, well, the CT scan showed that there was a mass in your kidney blocking it. Right there at the ureter. The ureter is the little tube that basically goes from your kidney from your kidney to your bladder. And that was blocked, which is why it was being why I had the hydrophonesis. And he said, and it also looks like it's already in your lymph nodes, so you're considered stage 4 at this point. I mean, he kind of didn't hold back the punches on that, and obviously that's pretty shocking. I remember, Dave and I just being, a little shell shocked at that time, and of course, my immediate response while we were waiting for more tests and stuff was, texting, my sister chain, our sister text chain. So they were all the first ones besides Dave and I to know, and a few other very close friends knew that night what was going on. They eventually moved me up into the room because with the blood transfusion, they have to give it to you so slow under observation to make sure that you don't have an adverse reaction to the blood they're giving you. So I was admitted, and they also wanted to admit me so that it would be easier to start seeing the doctors that I was going to need to see regarding my cancer, regarding the new cancer diagnosis. So I was admitted overnight. I did 2 pints of blood to get me back up where I needed to be. And then the next day I met, that was where the flurry of everything came. The oncologist who was on call at the time, I met her. I continued with her. She's still my oncologist 6 years later. And the urologist, there was a nurse practitioner with the urologist office, and she came by too. So it was, I was told that they were suspecting it was transitional cell carcinoma, upper tract urothelial cancer based on the location. And that was a pretty rare cancer in general. And it was even rarer I did not fit the demographics in any way, shape, or form for that type. At the time, the typical demographic for that was, older males, 70, 80 years old, who had been smokers their entire life. So they were obviously puzzled at how I ended up with this, but and to this day we still are. I spent the night, I think I was in the hospital for a couple of days because they kept me there to continue doing more scans, more tests. They spotted a couple spots in each of my lungs, but it was so small they were not able to determine if it was cancer or if it was just scar tissue left over. And so then after leaving, we did, it was a lot of going back and forth trying to figure out. We did the biopsy, confirmed what it was. The treatments they weren't really sure. I was a mystery on what to do. So we decided to do chemotherapy first. So I did chemotherapy from June through September. And then after that, we removed my kidney and ureter and about 20 lymph nodes, and all of them still had cancer in them. So the chemo had not gotten rid of the cancer. And then after that, I started immunotherapy on Keytruda from November of 2018 to November of 2022. And right now, I am still, they call it NED, no evidence of disease. Yeah, so it's been a lot of up and down. I did have a reoccurrence in a single lymph node in 2020 on the opposite side, on the right side. And again, that was based on the location. We couldn't decide the best way. They felt that surgery was too risky because it was right next to a major artery. They were also concerned about even hitting it with radiation was a little concerning because, again, it was so close to the artery. But we did decide I had a second opinion at Johns Hopkins at that time. And we did decide to do radiation and just had five radiation treatments over a period of 5 days. And then that took care of that lymph node. And I've been clear as far as cancer goes ever since then. But then now recently I started struggling with some back pain and hip pain and was just diagnosed a few weeks ago with degenerative disc disease and stenosis and also a herniated disc. So we're kind of going through getting my back and hips stronger and, getting over that hurdle as well.
Mm-hmm. Here at Spoonful of Strength, we want to make this podcast interactive. We want to hear your stories and we want you involved in our conversations. Follow Spoonful of Strength on Instagram, where we will post questions throughout the week. Your answers may be shared on our podcast. Do you have a story to share? Send us a message on Spoonful of Strength on Instagram with your health journey, and we may interview you on this show. Well, thank you for sharing. I mean, probably like many of the people who are listening, you've had multiple health challenges in your life. You mentioned Dave, which I know who Dave is, but do you want to explain who your support system has been throughout everything you've endured?
Oh, yeah, sure. So, Dave and I have been together for 21 years now.
You guys are the Kurt and Goldie.
Yeah, and he always joked. We do joke around because people will ask us. They're like, "When are you guys getting married?" And we'll be like, "Well, when Kurt and Goldie gets married, then we'll pull the trigger." So most time at this point in time, it's easier. Like it's pretty common. We just refer to each other as our spouse, because it's just easier to. We'll be like, "Oh, when are you getting married?" Or "How long have you been engaged?" And we're like, we'll get around to it eventually. So he was, and then my stepdaughter, Brittany, of course, she was home going to college at that point in time. So she was also there, helped pick up a lot of things, helped around the house a lot, and things like that. And of course, my sisters, my sister-in-law, Rachel, and I had a very strong, very close work family at the time that were great with support. And I also there's a dog sport I'm involved in called flyball. And my flyball family, of course, surrounded me, and not even just my team, but many other people within community really stepped up in their support as well.
Good, good. Now, I'm sure there's people out there who may have a family member or a friend who is going through treatment, whether it be cancer or a flare up of their disease. What would you say to the person who wants to be there for their friend, but maybe they don't know how, or maybe they don't want to step on any toes, or they don't know what to do to help?
Um, so I feel like in situations like that, a lot of people are almost afraid to reach out. They feel like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, they're already going through so much. I don't want to bother them, or they don't know how. So just simply reach out and say, hey, what do you need? What can I do to support you through what you're going through? And even if it's just something as simple as, hey, how you feeling today? Is there anything special you're wanting? I can, this day and age, I can DoorDash, even if it's somebody that's not, you don't live close by, you can
Right.
say, what do you feel like eating? I'll send it I'll send you a DoorDash order. Or, initially when I was diagnosed with cancer, like all kinds of encouraging cards and gifts and things to keep me busy during chemo, those long chemo days, and those type of things. One of the biggest things is that initially when you do come out with that announcement of, hey, this is what I'm going through, and you have that initial rally, is don't forget that 2, 3, 4 months down the road, or even longer, or even 6 years down the road, they're
Mm-hmm.
still going through it. It's uplifting. You initially feel like, oh my gosh, everybody's rallying around me. And then 2 years later, you're like, where is that support system that was, so, determined to be there for you initially?
Mm-hmm.
So don't forget that just because they're kind of moving on, or, it's not so new to you, they're still going through it. And, even occasionally just a word of encouragement, um,
Mm-hmm.
and encourage them to still keep going and
Mm-hmm.
not feel like they're struggling alone now that everybody thinks that the hard part is over.
Right. I heard somewhere, and I'm don't remember where I heard this from, but somebody who was going through a cancer journey, and she said one of the best things that she got were text messages that said, "I love you. I'm thinking of you. You don't have to respond. Just know I'm here." And that took the weight of, oh, I have to respond to this text message, or I have to call her and say thanks or whatever. But just putting it out there and just saying, please, I'm not expecting a response. I just want you to know that I'm there for you. I thought that
And that's
was,
important because it can be overwhelming. It can be overwhelming to feel like so many people to try to keep informed with. I mean, that's why I was very open and shared that whole journey on Facebook with all my
mm-hmm,
friends on Facebook. Yeah, and I feel like I did, a few friends I feel like I did lose, not so much close. I wouldn't say like Facebook friends, not close friends, and there's a little difference there, but
yeah,
because I feel like they couldn't handle witnessing that. But at the same time, for me, it was twofold of why I was so open and sharing. One was to encourage others, um, that were going through similar stuff. But also, it was just simply easier to throw it out there and keep everybody in the loop on there versus trying to send 50 million text messages to a bunch of different people or answering messages. Going back to that is, when you were asking how you can support a friend or a family member going through something, is if you have that in you, offer to be the contact point person of saying, you know what, you update me and I'll start a group chat, I'll start a group text, whatever works best, and I'll keep everybody else who wants to know how you're doing in the loop so that there's really only one or two people that the person who's going through something has to keep up to date.
And you actually did that for me. My husband had a tumor found on his kidney. And that was the first thing that you did for me, as you said, give me your family's information. And we've got one text message going. And so she was able to, I just told her an update, and she was able to spread it throughout my husband's family and my family as well. Now, thank God that it all turned out to be benign, and we had probably 4 or 5 months of not knowing, but that was very helpful, because what you don't want to happen is get feelings hurt because you forgot to update, mom, but you updated your sisters and all of that. And so that was really helpful for me not to worry. That I wanted to make sure my mom and my family got the updates as well. So that was very helpful.
Being the immediate caregiver, that's extra pressure that you don't need. So, if you are the immediate caregiver of somebody that is going through that, find somebody that that you trust, that you can depend on, and ask them to be that contact person. Don't, you also should not be the one that's trying to keep everybody up to date.
Yeah. Now, you obviously went through a lot. So did you ever have like a moment or a period of time where it was just like the low part of your story? Either it be depression or just some time where you really had to dig in to keep going forward.
I think that at the time, through the initial process, through all the treatments and the surgery, I was just so focused on, okay, I'm going to beat this. I, didn't allow any of the, any other thoughts in my head other than, we're going to do what we need to do. We're going to follow the plan, and I'm going to come out on the other side. For me, I think I struggled more after the fact, where I'm thinking, okay, I'm on the other side of this. I'm ready to go back to the way my life was before, and it's not. You adjusting to the new normal was the hardest part for me. Of and people, as you try to go back into that, the normal world. So, your normal life of what you envision going back to, and people try to protect you from, like when I went back to work, they didn't, they took some things away from me, not, to make sure that I wasn't doing too much. But at the same time, in the back of my mind, I'm like, but why are you taking that away? I always did that. I'm back to work. And, not realizing that it was being done out of, respect and concern for me. That was probably the big struggle, for the fact of just embracing the new normal for a while.
Looking back on your journey, right now you're cancer free. Are there any side effects or anything that still lingers, either from the chemotherapy or the Keytruda, something that's just like a little reminder of what you went through? Is there anything that's still going on to this day?
Sure, yep. So one of the chemo drugs, cisplatin, and those platin drugs are known for this, has caused hearing loss. And that it's unfortunately at the range where hearing aids don't help. And then the constant tinnitus that just never, ever stops. I have constant ringing in my ears. Sometimes it's louder than others, just depending on, if I'm overtired, or, just feeling run down, those type of things that flares up. The Keytruda, the reason why we stopped Keytruda originally, our plan, my oncologist was kind of thinking, well, as long as your body is handling it, we're going to keep you on it, because my cancer it was high grade, highly aggressive cancer, with a very high reoccurrence rate. So we were going to keep on it, but then I started developing colitis from that. So I went a year before we finally got that back under control, but we stopped Keytruda as a result of that. And that actually, I ended up losing more weight or dropping down even lower than I did with the lowest chemo weight from that. And so then, also going back to one of the struggles, I think, or that you were asking with the my mindset and feeling low right now, it's honestly like not just adjusting to the new normal, but having new things crop up. That's like, okay, is that related from the chemotherapy? Was it related? What was it caused from the radiation? So there's still like, because of the such long-term treatments, 4 years of treatment one way or another. There's I have the realization that something else could crop up eventually in my life that's a result of any of these treatments that I've been through.
Do you struggle at all with wondering if the cancer is going to come back?
I Not really, not too much. One of the I try very hard to not worry about that, because if you, I feel that putting those thoughts in your mind and allowing yourself to worry and think that is an invitation for it to actually come back. And also, if I'm worried about that, what was the point of actually surviving it to begin with if I'm not enjoying the life that I have now because I'm so worried about what ifs?
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing, because I know that it seems like, you just have this positive attitude, and not everybody can go through what you've gone through and not have, those moments of despair, and you've been able to keep a pretty positive attitude, which is really admirable.
I've had my crying moments for sure.
I'm sure you have. I can't imagine anybody not having those moments, but looking at it all as one journey, it seemed you kept pretty positive about that. So that's really great.
Part of that is just understanding it. One of the, like, I remember early on that, Dave and I, once I got back home from the hospital after that initial diagnosis, and, just laying in bed and trying to absorb it all. And both of us had that mindset of, we don't know, we don't understand why I had it, but there is a purpose for it. And so that was, even right from the very beginning, I embraced it versus fighting, if that makes sense. Going, okay, I need to embrace this because it's teaching me a lesson, or it's guiding me where I'm supposed to be.
Right. So you recently posted on Facebook. I'm going to read a little bit of this, but it said that you want others to realize that just because someone survives cancer doesn't mean life returns to normal. There is always that underlying fear it will be back. But if you let that fear lead your life, what is the point of surviving? Embrace life in both good and bad times. Listen to your body, and more importantly, don't be afraid to edit your story. So what does that mean for you?
For me, I wrote that an underlying fear part of, and it's interesting that because you had just asked me if I was fearful that it was coming back. So anytime anything new crops up, you can't help but think, okay, is it back? Is this back pain because the cancer is back and it's taken up residence in my spine? I mean, of course that's a thought that I had, but I didn't live in fear from that. I just knew, okay, if it's back, then I'm gonna have to, like, you have to kind of wrap your head around, like, almost have like a contingency plan for that. I feel that in my situation, again, that this journey, where the journeys were brought on is for a reason. What I mean by editing your story is, kind of revolving around what I referred to as, embracing the new normal of, you had a video. Of course, I had a vision of what I was thinking. I had a job that I really enjoyed, the business that I was hoping I would be, an organization that I would grow into even more, and be there long term. And then I stepped back because I realized it wasn't the best for my health.
Mm-hmm.
So, there was right there, I edited my story. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
okay, that's not what I'm supposed to be doing. The sign was when I had that reoccurrence was when I took that step back and, just kind of try to reshape, okay, where am I supposed to go with that?
Mm-hmm. And sometimes you need to edit your story. It sounds like you edited your story, putting your health as your priority. That realizing,
Yeah.
okay, these things are not healthy, and I have to focus on something else, which is your health, and that was
Mhm.
obviously the right thing to do.
Yeah. No, it's hard. I'm definitely one of, and I feel like a lot of women, especially out there, are similar to me of feeling that we have to take care of everybody else before us,
Mm-hmm.
before ourselves. It's difficult to learn the importance of putting yourself first, because by putting yourself first, then that actually will allow you to be there for and support everybody else. But if you're not supporting yourself, you're not going to be able to be there to support everyone else that you want to support.
Yeah. Well, I've got one more question for you. If you had a magic wand and you could change one thing about your life, what would you change?
That is always a tough question.
Hmm.
um, right now, I'm very happy where I am in my life. And I feel like the journey that I've had, throughout my entire life is what has brought me here. So it's some people may look back and go, oh, if I could make a magic wand, I would make the cancer. I never would have gotten
Yeah.
cancer, or this never would have happened, or that never would have happened. But if you're happy now where you're at, then going back and making a single little change could change everything.
Yeah.
So I would say that I really wouldn't change much.
Yeah. Yeah. One little change in your life could have, changed the whole trajectory of your life. And it sounds like you're in a good space right now. Of course, hopefully getting your back taken care of and all that. But to look over, everything that you've kind of discussed here, you're going on 3+ years of being cancer free, and cancer that you were told had a 14% chance of survival after 2 years. It's just an amazing story. I mean, I can't wait to see the future. I know you've got a new grandbaby, and looking forward to seeing him grow up and all of those things. I just can't wait to see how your story continues. And I think that us doing this together, I think that you have a lot to give for people who have also gone through cancer, but just also dealt with those. I've got this, and then I got this, and then I got this, and just that feeling of handling multiple things at once is just incredible to hear how you've been able to go through that with a positive attitude. So we appreciate you sharing everything, and I hope everybody out there got to know Tina a little bit more. And Tina, do you want to tell everybody what happens in our second episode this week on Thursday?
On Thursday, we will be flipping the tables, and Rachel will be sharing her story. And I'll have a bounce off a few questions, towards the end, like she did me. So we'll get an opportunity to learn more about Rachel and her journey.
Awesome. All righty. We thank you. Hope you all have a good day, and we look forward to seeing you back here on Thursday. Take care.
but